Hey, it's the morning and the bread looks really good. So it's sat out for 10 hours and it's really bubbly and it's doubled in size. So this is all great. Now, I just wanted to point out a few differences between um, knead dough and no-knead dough. So a high hydration dough, which is our case, it's got a lot of water in it, is considered a no-knead dough. And the reason why we don't need it is because, well, first of all, it's really hard to knead with it being so sticky. So I'll show you techniques of how to shape it without getting it all over the place. And also because why we need bread in knead bread recipes is to build up the gluten structure. So gluten is a naturally occurring protein that happens when wheat, flour, or rye, wheat, barley, or rye flour mix with water. It's just a natural protein compound that forms. And so that protein compound is what gives the bread structure. So whenever the yeast burps, essentially making those bubbles, the gluten essentially makes a net that catches those bubbles, and that's what makes the bread rise. So this being a high hydration dough, since we don't need it, the kicker is the water and the time. That's what allows the protein structures to form on their own. So it's really great because then we don't have to stand there and push on a loaf of bread for 10 minutes. So let me show you how we shape the bread. So get some nice clean counter space and lightly, very, very lightly bar the counter. So just a dust. And then we'll just turn out the dough onto this spot. Oh yeah, look at it. So good. Very good on the counter though. So all those kind of stringy looks to the bread, that's what the gluten's doing. So I'm going to attempt to get this off of my corner here. And we're just gonna flour our fingers, the fingertips. You're gonna just poke it out like you're making focaccia. And so you're gonna make kind of like this rectangle shape or whatever. Try to pick it up as little as possible and only with your fingertips. And if your fingertips get sticky, just dunk them in the flour again. So you're going to make a rectangle, fold it in a third, and then you're going to fold it again in the third. Try not to get too caught up in the stickiness. Kind of just unstick it from the counter in that way. So you've got another rectangle. So you're going to fold it in a third again. Stretch and fold it in a third again. Cool. So again, dipping the fingers if it's needed. And so I'm just going to, I'm going to fold it in half just for my own comfort here. And I'm going to press the seams together, press down and forward. I'm going to give it another quarter turn, half, fold it in half, and then press the seams forward. So we've got this kind of ball shape thing going on now. So turn it onto its seam so that you can see the seam side down. And this is where a bench scraper gets handy, or like a dough scraper, but I don't have one right now. I might pull out a spatula here next go around to give you an example of what that looks like. But anyways, so I'm picking up the dough. Now notice it's important to not have a whole lot of flour when we do this, but we're just gonna kind of like pull the dough towards us, pick it up, turn it a little, pull the dough towards us. So we're making kind of like a skin on the top. So I'm quarter turning every time so that I can get this ball, natural ball shape and not a loaf shape. Now, if you wanted to, like say you only have a loaf pan or something like that, then you just keep doing this. Totally cool. But see how it's getting a skin on the top? And we're gonna shape this 3 times. So this looks great. I'm gonna stop fiddling with it, but it's got a nice tight surface on the top of it, and this is perfect. And look at this texture, guys. It's so great. Bread is so fun. Okay, so I'm just gonna leave this here, and then we're gonna wait a half hour, and we're gonna do this all over again. So catch you in 30 minutes. I'm gonna go drink some coffee and stare into space. Hey, so it's rested for 30 minutes, and you can see that it's kind of relaxed a little bit. So we're just gonna do the same thing that we did before. And you might notice that it's less sticky, and it's got more structure, and that's because the gluten has liked what we've done to it. So we're just going to stretch it out again into our somewhat rectangle shape. Your third fold, your other third fold, dipping the fingers as necessary. Now, if this is your first time making bread, then awesome. I'm glad that you decided to join us. If you've made bread before and had trouble working with it, just know that it takes practice. So what I did there, I just folded it again and I tucked it and pushed it forward. I'm going to do that another time, folding it in half, tucking the seams together, pushing forward, just like we did the last time. And I might do that one more time. Not really necessary, but I like it. So we've got our ball shape, and I do want to add that little skin on top of it. So again, without adding any flour to the surface, just kind of pulling it towards us. Picking it up half turn. And so yeah, it's nice and tight on the top. You might see some bubbles that have worked their way up to the top of the loaf here. And we just leave it. It's gonna be good where it is. You don't need to mess with it as much as I do, but I'd like to. Look at it. All right, I'm gonna leave it alone. I'll leave it alone. And we'll come back in another 30 minutes. So I might go starch and iron my bonnet. Hey, so we're about to shape it for the last time. So we're gonna do the same thing that we did. Kind of poking it out. Doing that 3-fold. You'll notice it even being a little more stiff, which is great. Hoping it to unstick from the counter if it's sticking. And that half a fold, tucking the edges together. Half turn, doing the same thing. So, you know, it's really a forgiving dough. If it doesn't look pretty, who cares? It's gonna all come out in the wash anyways when we bake it. When it has time to rest for its final proofing. That's what it means when we let the dough rest right before we bake it. It's going to relax again. Anywho. All right, so probably good. I'm going to do that little slide and tuck action. The more you work with dough, the more comfortable you'll be with it. Don't be afraid of the stickiness. Now this type of bread, because it's so watery and sticky, it's going to make the bread that's got a nice hard crust on the outside and lots of air bubbles on the inside. So it's going to be great. All right, so I'm going to leave it alone. Now, what you need is get you a bowl and then line it with a tea towel. or flour cloth, or even linen if you have linen cloth. And then you're just going to take some flour and generously dust the inside of the towel. And then you're going to pick up your dough, probably squeegee it a couple more times against the counter, so you get that really nice tight skin on the top. This is the last shaping, so now's the time to do it. And again, if you are working with a loaf pan, then line a loaf pan with the tea towel and dust the tea towel from there. And then again, with your shaping, you're just gonna pull it towards you and keep it this rectangle shape. But if you're not, if you're using, if you're gonna make a round loaf like I'm doing, then you just keep rolling it into a round shape. So of course you don't have to fiddle with it as much as I do, but I just wanted to get that pretty skin on the top. And we're almost there. Maybe yours has already gotten that skin, so that's awesome. All right, I'm gonna stop messing with it. So I'm gonna pick it up. Now I'm gonna put the top side down, and so the bottom edge, where all the kind of like the ugly side, I'll say, is gonna go facing up, so that we can have the pretty side on top later. So just gently plop it in, and this is nice and happy in its home. Now you can dust the top with a little flour and then fold in the corners. We don't want to tuck it, just gently lay the edges on the top. Now you've got options here. You can let this rest on the counter for like 2 to 4 hours and then we'll bake it, which is what I'm going to do. Or you can stick this whole thing in the fridge, put it in a plastic bag or something so that the moisture stays inside, and you can put it in the fridge for 12 to 24 hours and then bake it later. So it's very versatile. And so I'm gonna do some yoga and then we'll get to baking. Hey, all right. It's been about 3.5 hours for me, so it's time to start baking. I did want to talk about baking vessels for just a moment. So you have many options. The best option is if you have a Dutch oven. I don't have a Dutch oven, but I've got a big stainless steel pot with a lid on it too. The most important thing is the lid here. So I've got my oven preheating to 450 degrees, and my pot and the lid are in there as well. So when you get ready to do this, make sure your oven racks are to the middle as possible, but keeping in mind that you need to have enough space for your Dutch oven or your pot to fit in there as well. And then preheat the oven with the pot and the lid in, so they can all get hot together at the same time. Now, say you don't, also be careful of which kinds of pots you stick in the oven, because some of those have those little like bottoms with like multiple layers. Just check to make sure that your pot is okay to put in an oven like this one is. So let's say you don't have a Dutch oven and you don't have a nice thick stainless steel pot. You could put it in a bread tin as well. And then you could put another bread tin, if you have 2 identical bread tins, stick it on top. So it's like making a little clam shell. Because the important thing about this and having a lid is that as the bread bakes, the moisture inside the loaf is going to go out, but we want it to cycle inside that little vessel as much as possible, because if the moisture can be retained, we can get a higher rise from our loaf. So if we don't have a lid on it, the top of it can get all dried out first, and then the bread is basically compacted. So like it's just not going to have as nice of a crumb on the inside, and it's not going to have as tall of a rise. So just things to consider. Now, if you don't have two identical loaf tins, or if you don't have a loaf tin at all, just get a cake pan and then put your bread in the cake pan, not preheated cake pan, not preheated bread pan. And then makeshift a foil lid so that you can keep all the moisture in there as much as possible, giving it enough room to rise and not like get caught up into the foil. Great. All right, so now we know where we are. Let's begin to transfer our bread. So here's my bread. It's been resting quietly, and it looks lighter. Feels a little lighter too. So I've got some parchment paper that I'm going to place over it now, and I've got a plate that I'm going to place over that. Now, carefully, I'm going to flip this upside down so that the bread is on the parchment paper. Removing the bowl, removing the towel, peeling back carefully. Try not to rip it. Just gently help. Oh yeah, oven's hot. Just trying to help the dough release from the towel. Great for the side. Time to score it. Now, it's not imperative that you score it, because the bread is going to vent its steam anyway. So if you decide not to score it, you're just gonna have a loaf that's kind of like blown out on one side. It's gonna eat, as they all say, no matter what it looks like. But I'm gonna score it nice and deep. So just be confident in your slashing here. Gently hold it with your left hand and then strike with your right. I'm gonna do the same. Maybe not as heavy. Doesn't matter. Cool, cool. Looks good enough. So I'm gonna pull out my hot pot, making sure that I've got my oven mitt, right? Right. Carefully, again, moving with the oven mitts, realizing that this is 450 degrees. We're just gonna pick up the parchment paper and plop it inside. Being mindful of the pot. Covering it up, putting it into the oven for 20 minutes. Okay, so here you have options. If you like that really nice brown crusty crust, then after 20 minutes, remove the lid, but then let it bake for another 10 minutes. I am indifferent to the crusty crust, so I'm just gonna leave mine in the oven for 30 minutes with the lid on, okay? And so we will check back at that point. Hey, I smell bread. Time to take it out of the oven. So I did give it a peek and took the lid off after about 25 minutes and thought that it was a little pale. So I let it cook for another few more minutes, and it's a little less tall than I like it, but not gonna complain. So, look, all right. Now we know that it's done because when we tap on it, on the top and on the bottom, it's got that thud sound, that hollow sound. So now we're gonna do our best to not cut into it. It really does have better structure if you wait till it's completely cool to cut into it, but you know, you do what you want with your loaf of bread. I'm gonna come back to this in a little bit. Let's see how we did. Not bad, kids, not bad. So those big bubbles here, that's exactly what we're looking for in a high hydration dough like this. And I gotta say, it's a little short, but I'm pretty pleased. And I guess we'll taste it. Pretty all right. You should definitely give this a try. It's really easy and it's really good. And it's just a nice, basic, beginner sourdough bread. So please let me know how your bread making goes. And I hope to catch you for the next recipe. Take care.